If you're a person who lives anywhere that isn't under a rock, then you're probably aware of the fact that human society and the planet at large are fast hurtling towards certain doom. Our buddy COVID just dropped a hot new album. Rampant wealth inequality means that fewer and fewer people can afford basic necessities, because super ultra mega rich goobers have all the money and resources stashed away in hidden bank accounts all over the globe. Many of these goobers are in charge of the corporations that have an ever-increasing amount of control over our lives and are directly causing the impending climate crisis by extracting every last crumb of profit from the earth and catapulting the byproduct into the atmosphere. If you're someone who likes being comfortable and alive, these are some pretty serious problems. Problems that have predominantly been created by the capitalist system which drives our economies. So long as the people causing these problems continue to be rewarded for doing so, they aren't going to wake up one day and say, you know what? I'm going to stop being the worst. They're going to continue looting the cargo hold as this ship slowly sinks, then merrily hop into their lifeboats made of solid gold, which will also sink, but by that point we won't be around to see it. Now, millions of people, including myself, and likely you too, dear viewer, recognize the current state of our world and understand that the trajectory we're following is entirely unsustainable. I want change, you want change, we all scream for change, but no matter how many times we vote, how many times we protest, or how many times we sign a change.org petition, nothing ever flippin' changes. Those from the mainstream right-wing political camps insist that change is unnecessary, or even ridiculous to expect, and honestly suggest that the only thing that needs changing is your attitude. It's your fault that your life sucks because you had the audacity to be born poor. Those from the mainstream left-wing political camps often agree that change is needed, but we can't have too much change. They tell us that's bad because of reasons. What we need to do is have lots of itsy-bitsy little changes over an unreasonably long period of time. Change is so ineffectual that the next political administration that moonwalks into office can immediately undo all of them. But of course, then things will get worse and you'll feel like you have no choice but to vote for them again, so in the end they still win, really. Well, I say screw these people and their worthless, terrible, horrible, no-good ideas. The fact of the matter is that these groups and the people whose vote they actually care about simply do not want change and actively work to keep things as they are. Because even if things are on fire, that doesn't stop them from being profitable. Well, I think options A and B are both pretty shit, so I suggest secret option C, an entirely new system. A system which is actually guided by a true set of left-wing principles that aim to meet the needs of all people both socially and economically. That's right, kids. I'm talking about socialism. For decades, the mere mention of a not capitalist system was punishable by harsh criticism, exile, or even death. But we now live in a time where people have the ability to funnel vast amounts of information into their brains using a pocket computer, which has allowed us to see past the carefully curated propaganda and start asking serious questions about the system we have inherited. Which means I can go ahead and tell you all about socialism, and I'll probably be alive to make next week's video. Socialism is an alternative economic system to capitalism, conceived by the man, the myth, the legend, your favorite German writer, economist, historian, philosopher, Karl frickin' Marx. This dashing lad dove deep into the inner mechanisms of capitalism, examining and highlighting the many flaws baked into the system. Which, hey, look at that, got him exiled from France in 1845 where he lived at the time, because some ideas are just too scary to hear. Marx wrote extensively about the class struggle between the group of poor and working class people referred to as the proletariat, and the rich people known as the bourgeoisie. He labeled capitalism the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, meaning it is a system created by and controlled by the wealthy people holding power in order to exclusively benefit themselves. Marx predicted that this dynamic would eventually create increasingly dire internal conflicts between the groups, which would result in the self-destruction of capitalism, therefore leading to the birth of a new system, that new system being socialism. Marx was clearly onto something because we see today a modern bourgeoisie, people like your boy Jeffy B, whose net worth is nearly the same as New Zealand's GDP. People who hold an amount of money that they can never possibly spend, no matter how many nights in a row they make it rain at Duck Club. On the other side of the fence, we see a modern proletariat, with people in third, second, and now even first world countries alike seeing their material conditions become increasingly precarious. With the accelerating destruction brought about by our changing climate and the further inequality of wealth and resources exacerbated by the pandemic, capitalism is nearing a breaking point, leading many of us to question what will happen when it finally snaps. Marx was spot on in his predictions about how capitalism would eventually pan out, but if we want something better to replace it, we need to have a clear vision of what comes next. Socialism is comprised of two main components: collective ownership of the means of production, and decommodification. Now, if you didn't do the readings, don't worry. I'm a big ol' nerd and I did all the readings, so you don't have to. All you need to do is like and subscribe. The means of production describes the space, the equipment, and the materials required to produce or sell goods. Under capitalism, the capitalists own the factories, everything within them, and therefore control the means of production. Meaning you, the worker, Have to be a good little employee and do exactly what Daddy Elon tells you to do. If you have a neat idea for how to make the production process more efficient or more ethical, too bad! You don't control the means of production, and you need to quietly make your way back to the production line or they'll give your job to Dave. Dave will do what he's told. Organizing the workplace this way means that the people who actually do the job, produce the goods, cook the burgers, sell the internet plans, or whatever it may be, have no say in what is being produced and why. Workers get a gentle pat on the head and a wage that has to be less than the value they output in order for the business to maximize profits. Under a socialist organization of workplaces, the workers would control the means of production. So everyone in a factory, restaurant, or grocery store gets a say in what they produce, what they sell, or what service they provide. Let me know in the comments. How many of you work for a business run by idiots who are clueless to the day-to-day operations of your workplace, and you carry a handy little list of proposed changes in your back pocket that would make the place make sense if management ever bothered to consider even half of them? It is the workers who know the ins and outs of the job, and it is the labor of the workers that allows the companies to be successful. By placing control of the means of production in the hands of workers, workplaces can then become more fulfilling, because the people doing the job will have a say in what the value created by their labor is used for. Employees can be given more control of their workplaces either through government regulation or through worker cooperatives, which are businesses where employees own a small piece of the company they work for, and vote on who manages it, how it is managed, what it produces, and most importantly, how profits are distributed. Every business, of course, functions differently, and employees would have varying degrees of control depending on the context of the role they're in and the company they work for. But what's essential is that they have some level of control over the labor they spend so much of their lives partaking in. From there, a socialist society would then need to work towards decommodification of the economy. A commodity is described as a useful or valuable thing. This could be a raw material like steel or a crop such as wheat. But with the way our economy functions presently, anything you can buy can be a commodity. A phone can be a commodity, a cow can be a commodity. So can a dinner table, a car, a house, clean drinking water, vital medication, or services like healthcare. Under the current capitalist framework, the limit to what can be commodified is the imagination of capitalists, with the market being the supreme dictator of what a commodity is and how much it should be worth. It probably makes sense for headphones to be a commodity. Not everyone needs a slick pair of headphones. Though it makes life a lot more fun, human beings don't require a means to listen to Russian pop rave band Little Big's latest extended playlist in order to survive. Even huge fans like me. Water, on the other hand, is kind of important to sustaining life. 1 in 3 people worldwide don't have access to clean drinking water, which leads to millions of deaths every year. In some cases, this is due to poor infrastructure, and it will take time to develop it to an adequate degree, but in other cases, this is due to water being commodified. We all know Nestle. They sell chocolate and baby food and have 7 subsidiaries which own more than 2,000 brands in all but 9 of the countries on the planet. In California, Nestle has found themselves in hot water for siphoning away the water from local streams in order to bottle it up and sell it back to people in a state that is constantly being ravaged by droughts and wildfires. They've been asked nicely to stop. We'll see if that helps. Basically, fuck Nestle, but we can't just focus on one corporation and its operations in one single country. Our entire global economy is littered with companies just like Nestle that use their incredible power, wealth, and influence to control the things we need to survive, so they can peddle them back to us for profits. There are other companies stealing freely available water from the environment. Companies that buy numerous houses to charge exorbitant rent to anyone who can afford it. And there are companies that create barriers to certain health treatments and medications. The problem isn't the companies. The problem is the structural framework that both allows and rewards their exploitation of people and resources. If we're going to fix the mess that this system has put us in, we're going to need to reevaluate what ought to be a commodity and what ought to be a human right. Now that you have an idea of what socialism looks like, how the hell do we get there? Well, the first step is for us to achieve class solidarity. This is where all of us who aren't among the wealthy exploiters at the top become conscious of our place in the social hierarchy, then come together and organize with the goal of leveraging our collective power to effect change. Those powerful few only maintain their position if the rest of us are disorganized, distracted, and angry at each other, which is why they work tirelessly to keep us disorganized, distracted, and angry at each other. For decades, this has worked, with the people in power consistently convincing us that your neighbor who voted wrong is the reason everything is shit. But this only works when people are able to survive, and we're at a point now where more and more of us, through no fault of our own, are unable to do that. It's not your fault your job is shit and doesn't pay you enough to make ends meet. It's not your fault you can't afford insulin. It's not your fault you can't afford to feed your baby. It's the fault of a system built to subjugate us and turn anything and everything into a product that has spun completely out of control and is this close to careening off a cliff and killing all of us. By banding together and pushing back against our oppression, we will have the collective power needed to make governments and businesses work to meet our needs, instead of the needs of the wealthy few. Once we are at that point, we can iron out the details of exactly what comes next, but within a system that is capable of taking care of people and the planet. It's time for us to demand something new, to demand something sustainable, and to demand a system that allows us to contribute to society without coercion and upholds our human rights. I reckon it's time for some socialism. I'll go into more depth about what that could look like in future videos, but in the meantime, question the narratives pushed by those in power, and be excellent to each other.